right. The Mycenaeans. Okay, if you're, ooh, let me go back to this one actually, our dates. If you remember, there we go. We have this group of Greeks, the Mycenaeans, or again, you'll hear people call them the Mycenaeans, whatever you prefer. That being said, roughly 1700 BC to roughly 1100 BC. I'm about to sneeze again. You guys, something got me going. Oh, I forgot to set the timer. Sorry. That way I don't go too long, okay? So, the Mycenaeans, all right? If you remember from the story yesterday, the Mycenaeans are the ones who conquered or saved, however you want to look at it, the Minoans from the island of Crete, okay? They brought them back up. The big thing that we need to deal with the Mycenaean Greeks is something you've all heard of. Every single one of you have heard of it. I guarantee it. Have you heard of the Trojan War? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay, now that you've all giggled like you're 5, let's be mature. The Trojan War. Could be true. Could be a story. Could be both. With the Trojan War, this is kind of a story like the Europa and the Bull story, where you kind of have to like look at the myth and the truth and try to unravel it. Okay? Trojan War. So, before we start anything, I want you to look at the way that Greece is laid out on this map. Okay? Predominantly, Greece is over here. Okie dokie. You have these little sections of Greece here, all the way over here. Okay, and all the way here, and of course the island of Crete down there at the bottom. You see this city right here? The city of Troy. The Trojans are Greek. We refer to the Greeks, in the Trojan War, we refer to it as the Greeks won. Well, the Trojans are Greek, but they're just in a different place, okay? So that being said, I want you to see where it is on the map, okay? You have Sparta down here and Troy here, okay? And the story of the Trojan War starts with a whole bunch of goddesses. And these Greek goddesses are all arguing over which one is the most beautiful. Do you remember her? Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, sex. Aphrodite is the goddess of love. She's the goddess of beauty. So she's probably pretty gorgeous, okay? Athena, and I don't remember who all the goddesses were who were arguing. But anyway, there's this whole group of goddesses arguing over who is the most beautiful. Well, for some reason, and y'all, I haven't read the Trojan War, the Trojan War. I haven't read this story in forever. I don't remember all the details, but for some reason, a prince of Troy, the city of Troy, right here, he is chosen to pick which one of the goddesses is the most beautiful. His name is Paris. Paris, like France, Paris, okay? Paris looks at all of these women and he goes, oh, it's Aphrodite for sure. I mean, again, she is the goddess of beauty, so I'm not surprised. But the other goddesses are mad. Keep that in mind. Aphrodite tells Paris, Oh, thank you. Because you chose me as the most beautiful, I'm going to give you everlasting love. You're going to have love. And he actually got to choose what he wanted. And he went with Aphrodite giving him love, but whatever. So anyway, Paris chooses Aphrodite. The other goddesses, oh, they're mad. It matters. And it matters that Paris is from the city of Troy. Okie dokie. So we have our setup. This story, I can't make it go away. There we go. This story actually comes from this guy right here. I'll show you his picture in a minute. His name is Homer. Yes, Homer. Haha, giggle. Okay, we're done. Homer. Okay. We say that Homer is the author of this story, but y'all, he didn't write anything down. This story would have been told orally, oral tradition. He would have told this story, and then Bob told this story to Bob Jr., and then Bob Jr. told this to Bob Jr. Jr., and then Bob Jr. Jr. told it to so on and so on and so on and so on. Y'all all have played that game telephone, right? Like where you whisper something in somebody's ear and you see if it gets back around the same, and you know it never does because somebody always changes it. But even if people aren't trying to change it, it's going to change over time. If I'm telling a story to, I don't know, a 5-year-old little girl, I'm not going to be as war oriented. I'm going to bring out the love aspects more, the beauty aspects more. Yeah. If I'm telling this story to a, I don't know, 12-year-old boy, I'm going to talk about the war. I'm going to talk about the fighting. I'm going to talk about all that stuff. Depending on my audience, I'm going to bring out the parts of the story that are going to bring you in more. Yeah? I mean, I do the same thing when I teach. You guys, newsflash, every single class is not the exact same. No. Some classes, I know I can play with y'all more, and I can be more goofy and sarcastic. Some classes don't appreciate that, so I can't. Some classes, again, if it's predominantly girls, I know that I'm going to teach in a slightly different way. It's still the same information. You just bring out more of the important parts. Sorry. Based on what your audience is going to like. Okay? That being said, this story, they're called epic poems. And it's from a book called the Iliad. Look at the very bottom down there. It looks weird. It's ILIAD. ILIAD. And I actually have the Iliad up here. I'll just have to show you in class. So if you're missed and you want to see it, you can ask and I'll show it to you. But the Iliad is this giant poem. It doesn't rhyme and stuff. Y'all, it's a giant poem in ancient Greek. Yeah? And again, the guy who we say is the author, I mean, he didn't write this. This guy right here. Good old Homer. Oral tradition. So by the time it was actually written down, the story had changed so many times that we don't even know if it's what Homer actually like originally wrote, or if it's totally changed, or if it's just a little bit changed. Man, we don't know. We don't know. Because again, when it actually is written down, it's written down hundreds of years after he actually started telling the story. So it's just crazy to think about like this massive game of telephone, right? That being said, you ready for the story? I had to get my lotion on. Okay. The Trojan War. For years and years, people only thought this was part of a story. The Iliad, the story of the Trojan War, this massive Greek war. Why? Because of love. People thought it was just a story until this was found. I mean, okay, it's some ancient ruins of something. You can very beautifully, clearly, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous, see the remains of just a beautiful amphitheater here. Look at that. It's some kind of Greek archaeological site. I mean, okay. This is that amphitheater. Isn't it awesome? Look at this. So beautifully preserved. Now, of course, it was like covered in dirt and crap and debris. And if I remember right, I think they found this in like the 1800s. I could be wrong. But I mean, for years, people were just like, okay, it's just a Greek town. So what? But then they started looking and they started seeing some similarities with some of the things that Homer said happened at the Trojan War and some of the things that they could tell happened with this town. Okay? Like you can tell, guys, when there's been a battle. Okay? Again, I know you're like, how? When you start studying archaeology, you can tell when there's been a battle. You see a whole bunch of like weapons, you see a whole bunch of stuff left over. You're going to see tons and tons of like just bodies, like mass graves. I know. You're like, "No, it's all going to be decomposed." I understand that, but you're still going to see like the what's it called, like the bronze swords and the shields and all that kind of stuff. You're going to see all of that stuff in a place. That tells us that war happened here. There was something big here. Then they started looking at where it was. And where this is, it's basically in this area here. Based on what Homer said, which could it be wrong? Yes. Remember our massive game of telephone, okay? You have to take this whole story with a grain of salt, all right? Massive game of telephone. According to what he says, though, the city of Troy should be in this general area. And the city of Troy has this big battle, right? And the city of Troy has these amazing walls around the city, right? Like they found this stuff. Could it be any Greek city? Yes. Just go with it. Because again, I'm the same as you. I'm like, oh, are we sure? No, no. But we can only go by what we know at this point. Okay? So that being said, this is the reconstruction of what the city that they found might have looked like. Okay? You have the water here and the coast, the what's it called, the beach or whatever. It's hard to see, but there is an outer wall here. I know you look at this wall, but that's not the wall I'm talking about. Look at this outer wall around the whole city. It would go all the way around. Okay, oops, that's what I was looking for. You see the wall out there. And then here, there we go. You've got the commoners would live out here. So this is all of our middle class, our low middle class, our peasants. There might be some trash diggers roaming around in there, okay? So you've got middle class and poor people in this area, in this outer area. Then you've got this massive inner wall. And to have multiple walls like this is not abnormal for the time. Again, we didn't do ancient world history in this class last year, But whenever you look at ancient Mesopotamia, that's this area, cities, a whole lot of the cities have inner walls that are even higher than the outer walls, partially because quite often they're up like on a raised area, like a little plateau or like a hill or something, okay? And then who lives back here? These are our nobles. These are our important people. These are our like kings, stuff like that, okay? Here you see this beautiful depiction of like a watchtower where military dudes would be. Okay. So yeah, like the city of Babylon has like these cool inner walls. I mean, it is normal for the time period. Okay. So again, I know you haven't ever seen anything like this before yet, but for this time period, it's not weird to have multiple walls. And whenever you look, every time, there we go. Whenever you look at the map, the people who have been living like in this general area over here, like not so far over here, but in this general area over here, they're a warrior people. So it makes sense that the Trojans would have the beach and then an inner wall over here and then an outer wall around the town here so that they can protect from the warrior people over here. I mean, it makes sense. That being said, so, okay, here's the story of the Trojan War. But these are like the Cliff's Notes versions. Okay, this is like the kindergarten version. So, remember how Paris chose that Aphrodite was the most gorgeous of all the goddesses? Well, she promised him love, and the other goddesses promised him revenge. Girls, we're bad about that. So, Paris. Paris goes with his brother Hector to Sparta. One of the kings of Sparta has a wife. Her name is Helen. You've heard Helen of Troy? Yeah, she's actually Helen of Sparta, but whatever. Helen was said to be the most beautiful human woman in the world. Um, the depiction of her typically is that she was blonde and pale skin. Whether she was pretty or not, blonde and pale skin is not typically what you see among the people here on the Mediterranean. They're on the beach and it's like warm. The sun hits them. So they tend to be what you would call tan. They tend to be tan. Okay. Typically they're going to have dark hair and darker eyes. You might have, blue eyes every now and then, but usually you're going to have brown hair, brown eyes, and like an olive skin, a tan skin. If Helen was blonde and blue eyes and pale skin, she's not from here. She's from up north, which, I mean, who knows if it's true or not? Who knows? Okay. But if that's the case, she's not from here. She's north. And if that's the case, that right there would be enough for people to go, oh, she's exotic. She's the most beautiful woman in the world simply because she is, I'm sorry, I'm moving this, simply because she is exotic. So again, who knows? But supposedly, Helen's the most beautiful woman in the world, and Paris and Helen see each other. Oh, what a beautiful love story. You guys know how I do with like love stories, right? Supposedly, like they fall in love immediately. I'm sure Aphrodite has a hand in that. Yeah, Helen's married. She's married to one of the kings of Sparta, which we'll actually talk about soon. They have two kings. And they're warrior kings. Well, that's bad. They fall in love, and she decides to leave with Paris to go back to Troy because her husband is a brute. And she likes the poet Paris, the music lover Paris, not the brute. unfortunately, the Trojans get blamed with kidnapping Helen. Again, whether they did or she went willingly, who knows? Or maybe there wasn't even a Helen, who knows? Okay, but this is just what the story says. They get accused of kidnapping. And so this huge group of Greek city states all come together to go to Troy and fight to get one woman back who doesn't even want to go back to her husband. Does this sound a little fishy to you? It's probably because it is. Here, let me move this. Guys, we do think the Trojan War probably happened. Not like this, though, okay? Historians think it might have been a trade war. Look, on our map, the Trojans had a really good trade agreement with the peoples over here. Okay? There's a road, which, again, if we were doing like just ancient world history, we would have already talked about it. But it's Persian. It's called the Royal Road. And it just goes like all the way, okay, down the Middle East. And the Trojans typically would trade Greek goods with these people over here through their city. They were kind of the gateway to get from here to here. Now, kids have asked in the past, well, but couldn't you just trade this way? Yeah, as long as those people don't kill you. The good thing is the Trojans had a working relationship with the people over here. So because of that, again, they're kind of the gatekeepers. You get Hittite goods, Middle Eastern goods from Troy, and they get Greek goods. Okay? So a lot of historians think, yeah, this is a trade war. The Trojans were jacking up prices. It sounds tacky, but it's business. They're jacking up prices because pretty much they're the only ones that really sell this stuff. It's capitalism. It's the name of the game, yeah? So if this is a trade war, it makes sense that the Greeks get this huge group of a whole bunch of cities together to go fight Troy. What's a little bit harder to grasp is that all of these cities would come together to fight Troy to get a woman back. And girls, I'm not dissing you. Hello, I'm a woman. But we have this like romantic notion of men fighting for us. Guys, they're dying for a woman, one woman, who doesn't want to go back to her husband. It's not a romantic notion. It's war, it's death. When you really think about the story, it doesn't. Again, most historians think what's really happening is a trade war. Okay? Regardless, though, Homer's story says, okay, move my big old head. There we go. Homer's story says that we're fighting for Helen. All these people die. The king dies. Like all these people die. Paris' brother dies. All these people die. And finally, after almost 10 years, 8 years, I was like, did I put it on here exactly? 8 years, okay? The Greeks are like, Troy, we just can't beat you. We just can't. So we're going to go home. We're sorry we've killed all your people. Let's just stop fighting. We surrender. Yeah, no, they don't. It's a trick. They're not really surrendering. In the story, they pretend to leave, and they give the Trojans a giant wooden horse. Because, I mean, we all want that. There is actually some truth here, and it makes sense when you understand what the horse is for. Because if all you know is that it's a giant wooden horse, I mean, who cares? Who wants that? Really? Okay, listen. Just like we at school have mascots, okay, bulldog or whatever, they have like animals that represent them, like the Minoans and the bull. Horse, Trojan horse, was the symbol of Troy, okay? Look at that thing. It's hard to see, but if I zoom in, you can see people back here, okay? So you can get a little bit of an idea of the size of this sucker based on the people here, okay? Why would anybody want that? The Greeks make this giant horse and then they present it to the Trojans. And the story is that the Trojans are like, oh, wow, this is great. And they take the horse into their city walls, which again, you're like, what? That makes no sense. Unless you understand what the point, what the purpose of the horse is. Again, it's a mascot, sort of, but more importantly than that, it's this giant wooden horse. Okay, two things about it. First of all, when you lose a war, and we talked about this when we dealt with World War I and World War II, we talked about reparations. I talked about this with Napoleon. I talked about this all last year in AP World. When you lose a war, you give something to the winner. The German reparations, okay? You give something to the winner. It might be reparations in the form of money. It might be land. It might be a daughter. It might be who knows what. But you give something to the winner, okay? So this is supposed to be like a peace gift, first of all. Because it feels weird that you're fighting, and then suddenly you take a gift from somebody. I don't know about you, but if I'm like in a war with somebody and then they offer me a piece of gum, I'm like, no, bro, go away. I'm not eating that. I'm not stupid. But it's different because it's a peace offering. We surrender, we're paying like our whatever to you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, okay, so their gift is a giant wooden horse? What? It was supposed to be like a watchtower. Okay, let me change that. Historians think that it might have supposed to have been like a watchtower. Again, the Trojans are in this place where you've got a warrior people from hundreds of years ago. The Hittite people who live right there, they've been warriors forever. And so it makes sense that you might put that giant horse outside of your city facing the Hittites. I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. It makes sense. Instead of being on like the tall watchtowers that are just open to the elements, you're in this horse that has like lookouts and stuff, okay? Little windows that you can see out of, that you can shoot arrows out of, all kinds of good stuff, okay? That's kind of the idea here, is that it was supposed to be like a watchtower, but in the shape of their mascot. Okay, when you think about that, imagine a giant bulldog is built, yeah? And you take it, what's it called? To the football field. Oh my gosh. And then you run through it. Doesn't that sound stupid? But isn't that what we do every single Friday night at our games? Yeah. It makes sense when you think about what it might have actually been for. It doesn't make any sense. If you're just like, yeah, they built this giant wooden horse. Okay. But if it's a watchtower, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the part of the story where they roll it into the city, like what you're seeing in this picture. They roll it into the city. Most historians don't think that happened at all. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But who knows? Here's the rest of the story, though. Let me go back here so that if you didn't finish the notes, you can get them. Okay. We're down here. Inside of the horse, there were several Greek warriors. Some of the best ones were hiding inside of the horse. Okay? And they're like lying in wait. And when the horse gets brought into the city of Troy, they just wait until nighttime. Meanwhile, the rest of the military has sailed off back to Greece. Not really, though. They're just pretending. And then they come back. It's all secretive. And then in the middle of the night, these guys who were hiding in the horse, they come out of the horse. And now they're inside of the city walls. Everybody's asleep, so they're able to open the big gates, okay, and let the Greeks come in, and then war. Don't you think, look at this horse. Don't you think the Trojans would have looked inside the horse? Surely. So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of issues with the story. Again, when you've got a story that's been told for hundreds and hundreds of years by oral tradition, and then it gets written down like hundreds of years later, it's going to be a little weird, okay? But could the trade war have happened? Yeah, absolutely. Did the Greeks win based on the archaeological evidence of the city of Troy? Yeah, they won. How it happened, if they were in a horse, man, we don't know. I don't know. Regardless, though, the city of Troy doesn't just get defeated. That sucker gets wiped off. I forgot about this picture. That sucker gets wiped off the map. What you're seeing in this picture, this is a Greek like painting. They painted on their pottery quite a bit like this style. But what you're seeing here is the Trojan horse and people hiding inside of it, people coming down, and then you see like war all around it. I just forgot about that picture. Sorry. But anyway, regardless if it's true or not, it does make sense that it could have been a trade war, again, between the people here and the city of Troy wanting to trade down this giant, massive royal road, okay, that comes this way. Makes sense. So that's the big Mycenaean story, okay? Tomorrow, the Dorians, and then we're going to start mixing them all together. Yeah? Okay. Auf Wiedersehen. Bye. As soon as I find... Well, I have no idea what happened to the mouse. Here, I'll